Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm Sanjay Vashist, going to moderate an excellent panelist present in in this room. This panel is going to cover aspects related to how to protect urban poor through resilience practices. When we speak about urban areas, it's always about mitigation. It's always about how rich are polluting, how rich are using energy excessively for luxury purpose, and due to which that's the class which pollutes, and poor in villages are impacted. However, the various studies that we have done, we figure out that there are very big population of poor people in urban areas which are impacted, which faces extreme climates while they are trying to survive on very low economical scale. This side event is co-organized by Climate Action Network South Asia, Misereor, Eficor, CNRS, Jwala Trust, and STPI. It's a regional side event, South Asia, and then we also have one international participant who are going to cover on the international aspects. So with us today, we have Nakul Sharma from Climate Action Network South Asia. We have Dr. Kabir Mohan Shetty, or Professor Kabir Mohan Shetty from Utkal University in Odisha. Then we have Cookie from Eficor from India. Cookie works extensively among vulnerable communities and can cover a lot more aspects in terms of the needs, expectations of these people, and kind of challenges they face. Then we have Anika from Misereor. Thanks, Anika, for joining us. And then we have Riyaz Saab, Honorable Member of Parliament from Pakistan. So it's a very rich panel, and we look forward to an excellent discussion here. So without losing much of the time, let me give floor to Nakul Sharma from Climate Action Network South Asia. Nakul, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sanjay. Good evening to all those who are listening from UK. I am delighted, I am glad to be a part of this panel. I would start, as Sanjay has said, that this panel discussion is based on, how protection of urban poor or poorest of the poor community is required through resilient practices. My presentation and my discussion, I would like to, focus that on the regional aspect of South Asia. And if you can see my slide on the slide desk, there's a picture which widely says, which says it all, I should say, that in South Asia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, how we actually care for our poor. And I would start with some numbers on urbanization and poor. If you can see, South Asia does comprise of 7 to 8, different states. But India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, are the one of the biggest states in the South Asian region. And taking them forward, talking about their numbers, give you a very broader picture, very realistic picture, what has happened, what is happening, and what is supposed to happen in that region. So I would start with these 3 states as an example, but that could be shadowed over the other South Asian states as well. So in terms of urbanization and poor, we very well know that around 58% of India's population is based on agriculture. And what it does is that with 58% of India's population, it makes it really vulnerable. Most of India's agriculture sector is dependent on monsoon, on rain-fed agriculture. So it makes it one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change. The Global Climate Risk Index 2021, very much underlines that fact. Similarly, we know from urbanization and from poor's perspective, around 30% of Indians lives beyond the poverty line, which is $1.25 per day. In terms of urban poverty, we have a ballpark figure of 25%, which converts into 81 million people in absolute numbers living below the poverty line. From estimates, from World Bank estimates, we understand that at present situation, 34% Indians millions are residing in cities, but that projection is going to multiply, and that explosion of urbanization is going to happen. By 2030, we expect that 41% of India's population is going to reside in cities. So just look at the scale. Right now 30% Indians, and when 41% by 2030, and by 2050 it's going to be much beyond 50%. So we are seeing in bigger notion, we are seeing poverty. We are looking that the poverty is moving from across the geography of India to the cities in itself. And the similar trends can be seen in Bangladesh and Pakistan as well. Bangladesh, we see that 21% of population is living under poverty line. But it's a very stark figure. Urban poor are 18% in Bangladesh, and rural poor are 26%. But that's going to change very fast. By 2050, Bangladesh is again going to cross 50% of the mark of people who are, going to be urbanized in Bangladesh. Pakistan, for an example, 62% of Pakistan's population, though resides in rural areas and directly or indirectly is linked to agriculture and allied economies. 24% of poor lives in Pakistan. Again, poverty rate is increasing, and nearly 37% of Pakistani sisters and brothers lives in urban areas, but that's going to change very fast. So that's the broader picture on urbanization and how cities are going to be the big center of poorest of the poor. When we compare it to the overall geography of any state. So that is happening. That change is really happening right now. Similarly, I would also like to give you a picture on poverty and pandemic. We've seen that what has happened, where our development choices have taken us. But in the last couple of years, since COVID-19 has hit us, it is very clear, if you can see from my picture, that in South Asia, South Asia is the biggest, net has given the net addition to people who has moved down or gone below the poverty line. From a baseline estimate, there are around 49 million people. That's the very realistic or very medium scale estimate. If we take a worst case scenario, there are 56 million people in South Asia who has gone beyond below the poverty line due to COVID-19, conflict, and climate change. 3 Cs we call it, which have very clearly marked the fault lines in our development narrative. And it's very starting to see that South Asia is even below sub-Saharan Africa. Sub-Saharan Africa in baseline scenario has led to 26 million people going below the poverty line, whereas in worst case scenarios is 40 million. So that's how bad South Asia is in terms of poverty and pandemic, and fault lines being very clear and evident. The migration is another thing. So what I want to clearly highlight here, apart from the real-time economic opportunities, the pull factor, economic opportunities, livelihood, best education services, healthcare services. These were the usual usual what you call by default. What you call the reasons for people to move from coastal areas, from their villages to cities. But what is happening is that climate change and sudden disastrous events have pushed people out of their own native places into cities, and that is what has also been captured widely by the World Migration Report 2020, which says that South Asia has seen the highest number of people at the risk of displacement as a result of sudden onset hazards. Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, they've seen that the estimates suggest 3.3 million people have been displaced in the recent past. Our in-house research, CANSA South Asia, suggests that by 2050 there will be around 40 million people who will be internally displaced or become climate migrants in the next couple of decades. So that's how bad the situation in terms of migration, in terms of COVID-19 multiplying health hazards. We all know air pollution and the health implications of living in cities. It's not a hidden fact. South Asia, we host the top 10 cities across the world in terms of air pollution and its impacts on adults and vulnerable group of populations. So that's why it's very evident with the kind of city and urbanization explosion which is happening over there. It's very evident and it's very critical for us to think that why not urban poor should be considered as the most looked after community that should be taken care of. There are some of the reasons which you can very clearly see. How does a urban poor look like? Their livelihood profiles range from construction workers to street vendors to domestic workers, sanitation workers. Age and gender profile could be different, but yes, they are all vulnerable people with disability, single women, children, elderly, and girl child as well. Their social profile is very evident. They lack basic services. They live on street. They are street children, slum dwellers, homeless people. Why they are most vulnerable? Because they have zero stake in plant infrastructure. Ownership to land, housing, transport is lacking. They don't have a access or a clear nameplate on any of their housing conditions. So that's why they are the most vulnerable community, and we need to look after them. That's why we thought that this is the community. If we can think about our cities which can look after for poorest of poor, then we can plan a city which can be holistic, which can look after for a wide range of communities, and we can plan for disasters as well. So yeah. Again, within the urban planning, as I said, we are missing the poor. This slide is an indication of this. The above picture is an indication of traffic jam in the capital of Bangladesh, in Dhaka. And then the lower picture is an indication of flash floods and urban flooding, which takes place usually every year in across South Asia, particularly in India and Bangladesh. There are figures and indications which suggest that cities are the main GDP generator, main economic benefit generators for any country, but cities in the recent past has also become the culprits, not real culprits, but cities have also become in fact very vulnerable to climate change. But through these slides I just wanted to convey that apart from urban poor within a city, there are two types of communities which live, and it is across the globe. One is the poorest of the poor, who is not the culprit but is the victim or is facing the burns of climate change. Another is the richer of the richest, and luxury emissions from the most rich must be mitigated and used to compensate the poorest of the poor. So urban planning should be done in that way. I'll compile and I'll conclude from my last slides that urban planning and just cities for all, especially for the urban poor, should be based on the principle of right to decent standard of living and social justice, equity in access to social services and urban city services, housing, water, energy, sanitation, health, education should be given and prioritized for all. A poor urban planning where municipalities and city administration start factoring urban poor as the main focus point should be there, and a South Asian strategy should be prioritized to make that happen. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say, and I'll stop there. Thank you, Sanjay.
Thank you, Nakul. I think that's very excellent setting the scene, and certainly you have laid down some principles, equity principles. I can see our virtual presenter, Mr. M.M. Rahmanji, Director CNRS, is also online. So we'll come to you, sir. So please be online with us. Now I'll move to Professor Kabir Mohan Shetty. Kabir Mohan Shetty, sir, comes from Utkal University. And sir, Nakul mentioned about 3 C's: COVID-19, conflict, and climate change. Of course, conflict is not relevant for us, but COVID-19 and climate change are relevant for Odisha, state you come from, state which is in the Bay of Bengal, and there's a lot more migrant population which had to move back to Odisha because of lockdown due to COVID-19. That was one challenge, and then climate change facing frequent cyclone has been the other challenge. Would like to know how Odisha has made itself a resilient state, especially the urban areas.
Okay, thank you, Sanjay, and good evening, everybody. And it's a great challenge to the Odisha to start from the 1999 super cyclone. Now we have faced about 9 cyclones in Odisha coast. As you know that Odisha coast have about say 480 kilometers long and with a good biodiversity. So the government of Odisha started from 99 how to resilient this coast and the people of the coast, and about say 6 major cities are there in the coast. So out of that also the Bhubaneswar city is the capital city of Odisha, which also faced a lot for the for these cyclones. But government has started a very good term and conditions for the resilient to the Odisha and also the cities of the Odisha. So starting from this, if I will go to the how we have made the city resilient in 2 different sectors. One is how to mitigate the problems of the urban slums. So those are there inside the city. About say 100 urban slums are there in Bhubaneswar and also other cities of the Odisha. So to make them resilient, the different policies and the different issues has already been raised, and also the government of Odisha has taken care of. Now moving to the total population of these particular cities, the million city of Bhubaneswar and also the centenary city of the Cuttack, those are very close to the Bay of Bengal, and Bay of Bengal has a lot of problem to these cities. So coming to the total, what actually the system we have developed to make the resilient of the cities. First of all, we have the mass awareness they have developed after the 99 cyclone. So after the 99 cyclone, the total population has been made aware that how they are going to resilient at the time of the cyclones. So development of this cyclone and the development of the resilient houses they have first taken care of, and also the awareness. Second is, we have evaluated that how these particular cities are going to have their own livelihoods in future, because the most of the cities of the Odisha coast, they don't have the good infrastructure, which is facing a lot. For that, government of Odisha has taken the first to build up the resilient houses for the coast. Second is, when we are talking about the settlement or the shelters, last filing has damaged the city of Berhampur, which government has built up about say 16,000 resilient houses for the poor. Because urban poor doesn't have any houses, they usually stay in the thatch houses. So that is one of the steps government has taken. And if we will go to the death toll made in Fani after the super cyclone, and people died like anything, about say 10,000 population has been died in Odisha. But then after, the government has created a mission that how we are going to make it zero. And in Fani, it has been successful, and also we have seen that there is a zero death toll in the Fani cyclone. Coming to the next point, when I am talking about the disaster management cell, the government has created a havoc to the, when the havoc has come, government has created one mission that how the state disaster management cell will be empowered. And they have been empowered like anything, and also they have taken care of from starting from the urban poor to urban people. Everyone who has been taken into account, and also they have created a scene that everyone should go for the how they are going to create a scene to face the problem and also create themselves and manage themselves to overcome this particular situation. Talking about this, then when we are talking about the lessons what we learn, if we will go to the super cyclone, the lesson was that the public awareness system was very poor, and that has and that has been created in different sectors, starting from the print media to the print media to the this is your electronic media. So what way forward we have taken? That government has started that disasters, to meet the disaster, we have decentralized disaster management at the district and below the level, and a well-laid recovery strategy for the state. Because if we are not going for the recovery, it is very difficult to manage the state. Now, preparedness in fund mobilization for effective and better response, as because when the coast is being damaged, the biodiversity has been damaged, and also most of the forestry has gone to the Bay of Bengal. Now, question of how we have expanded capacities of OSDMA, because OSDMA people, in both the cases, we have seen that OSDMA has been coordinated by the government and the non-government organizations. Yeah. So, if we will go for the search capacities through external experts and paired with local experts and terms, and also decentralized district level units in districts to document disaster and devise recovery plans. So also we are talking about the laying a normative framework with strong supervision and monitoring for sector recovery. Out of that also, when we are talking about the recovery strategy, we have resilient houses and resilient infrastructures, and also we have think of the resilient livelihoods. So biodiversity, to control the biodiversity damage, the different policies has been made by the forest department, and also the NGOs, those have taken care of the different forests. So when we talk about this Odisha coast, because Odisha is full of the resources, the government of Odisha, day before yesterday, has declared one mission that when the climate change is going on and also the city is going to be polluted, the government of Odisha Chief Minister, Honorable Chief Minister, has told that if someone is coming with the electric bike and electric cars, they will not go for the registration and also the taxes. So that is a good mission we have started, and also to make all those cities to clean and green, the government of Odisha has been started different missions. So for that, our government and also non-government peoples are very much engaged. So thank you very much, Sanjay. I think I am in time. So thank you very much to have a
thank you, sir.
To me.
Thank you very much. Very timely, you managed within time. I think innovative measures like social participation through mass awareness, quick coping of livelihoods, resilient infrastructure of especially houses, and of course decentralized recovery plans are an excellent strategies and very innovative way to build resilience in urban areas. Cookie, I know Eficor is working among communities in many states in India. Would like to know your strategy, or do you agree with these, and would you like to add to the list of these strategies? Cookie, all yours.
Okay, thank you so much. It's a great privilege for me to be presenting on behalf of Eficor. Eficor is a national level NGO working in different parts of India. And particularly, we have done urban work within Delhi and in the emerging cities as well. So tonight or this evening or morning, whenever you're watching this, I will be talking about the issues that we have confronted in those slums and urban settlements that we're talking about, and the resilience that the community have built as part of our intervention. So I'm going to talk about Eficor's urban resilience intervention. And in terms of urbanization and its implications, I think we all know, and Nakul has already talked about, the push and pull factor. The pull factor would be the growing labor demands in perpetually expanding cities. The push factors would be the failed agrarian outputs in rural areas, which is a direct result of extreme weather events because of climate change. And majority of the people that come into these urban areas are illiterate and unskilled. They live in poor sectors of society, in slums and settlements and colonies. Also, they have a lack of identity in terms of things that they possess. Identity cards that they possess that is required for government support. The erratic work schedules, which is unstable and low-paid jobs, informal settlements with very, very minimal basic amenities, and I think we're all very aware of that. The children and young adults are deprived of education or health care, livelihood support systems, and this also happens due to frequent disasters. Of course, these communities are also neglected, they're voiceless and exploited in the midst of glittering residential mega complexes that some of us live in. And therefore, that makes them susceptible to various forms of drugs, alcohol abuse, especially the men and the youth. And, so there's daily wage labor availability of work resulting from shift to the rural, to the urban. So as Nakul has already pointed out, we have seen this where there's a huge shift because there is a glamour of working in the cities. And so why did we intervene? Why have we as an NGO intervened? Because of, as we've said, increasing migration from rural to urban for better job opportunities, or it could be because of disasters that have happened, which the earlier panelist has mentioned in Orissa. There's so many natural calamities that have happened that has pushed people into urban areas. Also, their services are most demanded. We want domestic workers. We want cheap labor in the cities to clean our cars, to clean areas for us, but they're also the most neglected in terms of welfare. Although slums and settlements in cities are a national shame, so if there's going to be a big event that happens in the country, then these slum settlements are often razed and people's homes are razed away. We're also very aware that high population density is there in these areas, resulting in lack of sanitation and basic hygiene practices. And they're hardest hit by the pandemic, for example, during the COVID or any calamity that comes, any extreme weather events, any flooding, whatever, they're the hardest hit in the city. And so it is the collective responsibility of the government and also of NGO actors to support these urban communities, and which is why we're intervening. So why they're vulnerable, I think we've said that, so I won't say that too much. There's physical, economical, psychological, the informal settlements, hygiene issues, they don't have enough money, and life is unpredictable because their livelihoods are not secure, and psychological because they're always in mental stress. There is no means of security or something to hold on to, especially in an emergency. And we saw signs of that very, very clearly in the COVID pandemic. And of course, any calamity, we see that people are left with nothing at all. And of course, the inadequate spaces also lead to psychological vulnerability among the urban poor as well. So how are we building resilience in urban poor communities? We have been working since the 1980s, although we are more than 50 years old as an organization, but it was in the 80s in Delhi where we started working in these areas. And these are some of the interventions that we have had that you can see on your screen. And mostly our interventions have been in the city of Delhi, where we also have our head offices. And it's been a challenging response to work in these with communities that are so vulnerable in so many different ways. So why are we working? What are the key areas? The first area of intervention and the problem identified was livelihood needs that we've talked about, unemployed youth, which then obviously leads to difficulties amongst youth, resilience and capacity needs, insecure communities during emergencies. So what have been our interventions to address this? Community mobilizations and formation of community-based organization. That is key to gaining trust in the community, to building some form of identity. Capacity building, training people, linkages with the local government for social security benefits, which is absolutely crucial because, and for that, we may get them some form of identity card from the government, which is needed to get all these social security benefits. Vocational skill training, young people just roaming about in these settlements, train them, give them an opportunity of livelihood, and that follows on to income generation support, startup or supplementary support. The second key intervention area is in the problem of the problem identified is facilitation, coordination, networking and liaison with duty bearers, which means the government officials we have all these schemes and programs that our people are entitled to, but they do not have access to them. So what are our interventions? Help and guide in documentation and submission of forms for entitlements, which is a very, very easy thing for some of us living in other parts of the city, but for those living in slums, it's a big challenge, and that could be the biggest hurdle for them to access things that belong to them. So it could be online or offline. Help and guide in documentation and submission of identity proof or documents, visits and meetings with the government departments for active services to the poor. So we may very confidently walk into a government office, but for an urban poor person, this is a big challenge. You will not even enter the doors, and therefore just supporting them to do that is a huge area in which we can build resilience and help the urban poor cope better. Our third intervention area is affordable quality education. If you start poor, you end poor. And therefore, how do we help young people, children in these slum settlements, to have a better chance at a future? Is through, offering good education. And we've done that through Children Resource and Development Center, come tuition support. Very simple, but could mean life-changing. And also extracurricular activities and events, celebration. Again, a very simple thing that some of us take for granted. But for a poor child in the slum, this is a big deal. It's a big deal to be able to do something different than just existing in a slum. And our strategies and approaches for these have been facilitation and coordination with duty bearers and right holders, which means the government and the community, bringing them together, capacity building of the local leaders, women and youth empowerment, such a key aspect of community. And so we work to empower them, inculcating a sense of cohesion and collective responsibility, because many of these people have come from different parts of rural India, and therefore they're put together in a slum or a settlement. Their identities are different, their cultures are different. How do you then get them together to work responsibly? And that's what we do. And adaptation through affordability, increased purchasing power, so that they have purchasing power, availability of work, accessibility to social security schemes, and acceptability. That means having legal documents so that they're seen as citizens of a country that can actually have access to those. And our expected short-term and long-term results have been the communities would have stable earning through improved livelihoods, and therefore in the face of any disaster, they'll be more resilient to face it. Women and youth would learn by utilizing their skills, be it in salaried job or through self-employment. People will have supplementary income support from the government through pensions and financial assistance. Again, very simple, and yet it could be life-saving in the face of a pandemic or in the face of any other disaster. Children become more interested and perform better in their studies. The communities become aware of their rights and responsibilities as a citizen of the nation. Communities have better services in the communities from the duty bearers or the officials, and have improved civic amenities and more resilience in times of disasters and calamities. So these are things that we are doing to prepare the community, to make them more resilient, and working at the grassroots in constant contact with the community, so that they have a better chance at facing anything that life throws at them. And these are just some glimpses of our work that we have done. Yes, so that is the work that Eficor has done mainly in the city of Delhi, and just helping communities so that they can have a chance at living longer, perhaps. Thank you.
Thank you, Cookie. That's amazing work, becoming a voice of voiceless, working with those who has been phased out of their habitat, protecting those who are vulnerable or being exploited. Of course, COVID-19 was one eye-opener to everyone when all these vulnerabilities were stark open on our face. Rich could protect themselves, poor were out and open, suffering for it. In fact, I normally say so very convincingly that this pandemic is a creation of rich, and suffering is by poor. And why I say so, because those who fly in aeroplanes, they spread it initially in every country. and then it's the poor people who got affected and who face the burden. Not only because of the pandemic hitting them, but also because of the lockdown that happened. And I think one of the work that you are doing on entitlement of rights is amazing. Before I come to Anika and then Riyaz Saab, I would like to invite our virtual presenter, Rahman Saab from CNRS. I'm really happy to see our 3 member organizations in this panel, CNRS, Eficor, STPI. So I think that's what Climate Action Network makes of its member organizations. We are a very strong network. Rahman Saab, you have the floor.
Thank you, Sanjay, for giving me the space for making the presentations. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. Actually, we are going to present a case today here in one of our projects called G4CR, Governance for Climate Resilience. This is not actually directly working with the urban communities who are poor and suffering in the slum areas, but we focused on working at the source from where people actually migrate due to various disaster and climate-induced stressors. So now I'd like to share my slides here. Yes, facing a bit difficulty to share the slides.
Okay. May I request technical team to help us with slides? You can also go through your slides if it is taking too long time. We can listen you, and all our participants who are attending this side event will also be able to listen to you.
Okay, thank you. Our case is from Satkhira district, which is in the southwest coast and bordering India. And in the south, there is Sundarbans, the largest single unit of the mangrove forest, being shared between India and Bangladesh. We did a rapid study and found that in one place of the urban setting, more than 700 households are migrated from the coastal areas, mainly due to, though migration started a bit earlier, but during the 2 cyclones, Cyclone Sidor in 2007 and Cyclone Ayla in 2009. And these people are living in a congested makeshift houses, and most of the government facilities or service and facilities are absent in that place. And about 90% adults are engaged in unskilled laboring activities, and children from most of the families are also engaged in income earning activities. And the dropout rate in the primary level education is very, very high. And there is no government school at the slum areas targeting these slum dwelling children. Other than that, the health situation is very poor, and gender-based violence is also very high. So there is also prevalence of both the communicable and non-communicable diseases, and of course inadequate health service facilities, and water scarcity and sanitation scarcities are there. And there are also local influentials who often try to grab the slum land to make property, make buildings and other stuff. And COVID-19 pandemic is another layer of threat on this already overburdened population. So the place now I'm talking, basically we understand that to reduce or building the resilience of the urban communities, particularly the poor, we need to work at both ends, at source of migration and also at the place of migration, migrated people. So we are actually focusing at the source level? Can we do something so that the migration rate is reduced and people stay there and build their capacity, adaptive capacity and resilience? The place we worked under the CGRF funding, the Climate Justice Resilient Fund, the place having various biophysical problems and also social problems. The cyclone salinity, climate adversities, freshwater scarcity is a very key problem because the water and land is saline due to inundation with saline water during cyclone and high tides, but also due to massive shrimp farming. Drought is also there and loss of biodiversity. Single crop area, people can grow only monsoon rice during the rainfall time. Salinity goes down and they can grow a crop. The food and livelihood insecurity is very high in the area. But from the social point of view, the people don't have access to the legal and policy aspects to claim their rights because the area is dominated by the shrimp farmers and the rich people. And lack of legal support, lack of collective action, they are not organized. And power asymmetry is a big problem. And there is also lack of information and development services. And people have very weak capacity to raise their voices. So the migration, when we talk to the people, is mainly due to high salinity and loss of access to the CPRs, the common pool resources, and weak governance and exclusion from various supports and services. So what we did from the project to retain people and improve their resiliency at the site, we actually created freshwater provision by excavating or rehabilitating canals and also excavating ponds. Supporting these ponds and canal re-excavation is basically for storing the fresh rainwater so that people can diversify their crops, can grow crops in the dry season and also in the monsoon season. We also supported ponds and filter to have drinking water and engage communities with the local agriculture extension department for smart farming systems, capacity building training, legal supports, and advocacy campaigns, and sharing the lessons and issues with various actors. We have many photographs, but cannot show you at this point of time. So, like to highlight that when we started at the baseline situation, the land use was, fallow, and almond rice, meaning monsoon rice. So during monsoon, it is green, people get a rice crop, but other two seasons, the winter and the summer, is remaining fallow. So through the interventions with the agriculture...
Please have water, we have time, no problem.
Okay. So through the intervention that with the project involving the Agriculture Extension Department officials at the field level, we build the capacity of the farmers and linking them with the various good quality agricultural input providers. And then they actually, and using the fresh water that we created through excavation of canals and ponds. So now, after the intervention, people can grow 3 crops in a year: the winter rice plus vegetables, summer rice plus vegetables, and monsoon rice plus vegetables. And these vegetables is not only limited within their homestead lands for household consumption, but as a field crop. It's a commercial agriculture farming. So that actually supported, to have food security year-round, and also income security, because they also earn income by selling this thing. Apart from this thing, we also demonstrated 6 integrated pond aquaculture and agriculture systems, through which people can grow fish in small ponds and can use the water in the dry season and winter season to grow crops, particularly monsoon winter rice, and also varieties of vegetables and fruits. So that basically engage people year-round because the ponds are a bit safer from flooding, so they can store enough rainwater, and it is also used for household purposes. And the other thing, another important thing is this integrated integrated aquaculture, agriculture using centering around the ponds that help build resilience of the communities, because the pond, they get fish from ponds, the cropland they can grow winter rice, the dike they can grow use for crops, and also the organic materials generated, they use this for making the organic compost or or manure. So in return, they get rice, fish, fruits and spice crops, vegetables, farmed and wild. There are also 5 varieties of wild vegetables grow there. People use that for consumption, fuel and manure, fodder for livestock, and habitat diversity. This helps improving the habitats, ecosystems, and also support biodiversity. So collectively, all these things help building the family resilient to shocks due to disaster and climate-induced stressors. This also helps reducing the migration and also their reliance on the Sundarbans, very close to their home. But you all know that the Sundarban is overstressed and overused and making problems due to unsustainable harvesting of the resources. Yeah, and also these opportunities of fresh water actually created employment opportunities for women as well, because many of the women, they were trained on farming systems, and they participated in growing vegetables both at their homesteads and also on the canal banks, the canals that we rehabilitated. So they did vegetable cultivation along the canal banks. Where's the next one? Yeah. Yeah, so we actually analyzed this, our project results, interim results of the results, whatever you say. And this is, we believe that is a nature-based solution approach, because we just created freshwater provision for the people. And then other thing is, using the water for diversifying crops and producing varieties of crops instead of only one rice they used to get before. So it provided water security to the people, the food security from the fish and pond systems, and food security which is from climate smart farming systems, so rice and vegetables. And that actually helped the health and nutrition, improving the health and nutritional status, and it increased the landscape diversity and agrobiodiversity in the area. And definitely is building the adaptive capacity to address or moderate the climate change impacts, and also demonstrating the system linkages, the water, food, climate change, biodiversity, and health. These sort of nexus things are demonstrated. Yeah, and we also analyzed that these interventions actually touched upon six sustainable development goals. For example, the no poverty, zero hunger, clean water, combat climate impacts, and life on land and below water, and access to justice, because it is we have several court cases, because most of the canals are leased out to the one or two powerful people. So several court cases we supported or facilitated, and communities actually they issued the cases to free the canals for public use, for common property use, or as a common pool resource systems. So that's why I'm saying that we also access to justice through this project. Yeah, supporting. So in summary, basically, this is done in a small area in the coastal zone where climate-induced migration rate is very high. We collected information at the baseline, and we have found that around 70% people, they do cyclical migration for days and months together. They go to the city areas and live there and do some odd jobs when job is scarce in the locality. Basically, job is scarce because they only during the monsoon they are involved in farming systems, but the shrimp farm actually absorbs very, very less number of wage workers. And going to Sundarban is also very risky nowadays, and lots of problems are there. Tiger attack, crocodiles, and also harassment by the authorities. So this farming system or the landscape production system enhancement is a good way, and linking the communities with the local actors like agriculture, fisheries, water boards, and also the administration, and even with the court. So now people are more kind of empowered that in terms of information and knowledge, and in terms of their capacity to raise their voices at different with the different institutional actors. So in summary, we like to say that building resilience of urban poor demands actions at both ends: source of migration and the destination of migration, meaning at the urban areas where they migrate and the place from where they migrate. And climate disaster-induced migration and sufferings of urban poor is largely a justice or human rights issue rather than technical issues. So problems of migration and livelihoods of urban poor can thus be potentially reduced through incorporating climate-smart livestock options, protecting common pool resources, and reducing climate change disaster risk at source. The interventions evident reduction of forced migration to the cities.
Rahman sir,
So,
can you hear me?
yeah.
You have to conclude in next 5-10 seconds actually.
Actually, these 2 points, the building resilience at the urban and
we have
the
2 more speakers, so please, please wind up fast.
So these are my concluding words.
Thank you. Thank you, Rahman Saab. Thank you. Very informative, and I think in the integrated approach of combining SDGs and building resilience to climate threats, nature-based solutions. We saw how they look like on ground, Anika. We also heard about source, Satkhira, and then destination, which is normally Dhaka or Chittagong or maybe Khulna. In Bangladesh, we heard from how a state has built a resilience. State like Odisha, which faces frequent cyclones, has built resilience through community participation. How Eficor is working among communities in cities and who are rehabilitated. I remember Bawana and Halambikala are 2 areas which were rehabilitated because poor people were moved out of Delhi when the industrial zoning started in Delhi. So there are examples on the ground. I would like to, I'll request you if you can focus on how to replicate it. And after you, I'll come to Riyaz Saab, how a policymaker sees your recommendations and how to replicate action on ground. Anika. All yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me to the opportunity to speak here. My name is Annika Schröder. I work at Misereor. Misereor is a development organization which is based in the Catholic Church of Germany. We collect donations from people in the parishes, but we also get donations for our work from the general audience, from the general people in Germany, and some funds from the German government. And overall we have like 100 projects in urban areas between Pakistan and Oceania. And as a NGO-based organization, that's quite a lot, and I think we collected a lot of expertise when it comes to urban development and giving back the right to the poor. And what I want to do today is just to say a few words about what we do and why we do so, and what we see the main challenges are in the future, and what, from my knowledge and from from the discussions I'm having with partner organizations, I would like to draw out a few recommendations to other donors, and those recommendations are also counting for the different funds under the UNFCCC, be it the GCF, be it the Adaptation Fund, or be it any other program that is being financed under the rooftop of the UNFCCC, because really small organizations face different challenges than the big ones. As many of you already know, and what you have heard today as well, is that city dwellers are not often really well recognized by the local authorities, and sometimes being seen as illegal, which causes many, many problems. And you mentioned, right, it is a question of access to public resources. It's a question of human rights and dignity and justice to deal with those questions, and not solely a question of providing goods and do charity for those people. The poor access to basic services like water, sanitation, health, and emergency also includes that in case of an emergency, there is no help coming from many, many authorities around the world. And this is not only true for Asia, but we also observe this fact in many, many other settlements around the world. Evictions are a daily fear of many, many urban dwellers around the world. And sometimes it's more than once in a lifetime experience to be evicted from a place where you start to make a neighbor, where you start to socialize, where you start to connect, where you start to build a network around you that is of help in case of an emergency or a health issue in your family. And those evictions today also take place in the name of adaptation in many, many cities and also around in Asia. I can name a few examples, if you like, later on. Aside from this, we do see many challenges on the horizon for the urban poor. And first of all, aside from all the different impacts of climate change, like heat, like health issues, it is the rising sea level that haven't been mentioned today. So I like to add on this. So most of the cities have been built at river flows. Most of the cities worldwide are growing, and most of them lie near to the ocean. And if we see the developments of having 1 meter more of sea level by the end of the century, many, many parts of the metropolitan area of the urban settings in the future will get flooded, and we need to get an answer, where do the people go to? And we need to make sure that there is not only new industrial areas built in safe places, but that there are safe spaces and places for the urban poor to go to, not in a way of eviction and relocation, but in a way of just unplanned migration. So we do have a need to talk about those issues, even though it is extremely difficult when you talk to organizations which have an identity of protecting the spaces where the poor live. Yes, it's their identity to make sure that those who are rightless stay in the areas they live today. But in the future, we need to think about where could they go to. The second trend is the urbanization as such, and you mentioned a lot of times the migration that goes from country to city, but also we still have a growth from in between the cities. So it both adds to the urbanization trend. And by 2050, we will have an equivalent of the today's worldwide populations living in cities. So 70% of the infrastructure in Asia, the urban infrastructure that we will see by mid of the century, has not been built yet. And this always is being discussed as a challenge, but I see a huge solution here. A solution for more dignity and more climate-friendly development in those settlements and in the cities as such. But how to plan for this well-being? We can do so. we can build better cities which ensure mobility for all rather than a car for everyone, and especially the rich. We can ensure a city with reasonable flats for everyone rather than family houses with a big garden for the rich only. And we can develop parks for everyone to cool down the cities, to give people a place to relax, to see the sky, and efficient houses instead of air conditioning for the rich. So efficient houses for everyone who cool down themselves, even in really, really high temperature situations. So allow me to recommend a few basic steps ahead when it comes to climate finance for urban development, when it comes to urban resilience, when it comes to urban adaptation, but also when it comes to urban mitigation strategies. Those are based on 60 years of experience that Misereor has with communities on the ground. The first is to ensure access to those most affected via those who work and stand on their side, like the stories we have heard, for example, from Eficor. So we ask, for example, for a facility at the Green Climate Fund, which is open to NGOs. We already have a private sector facility, so why don't we have a civil society facility? But access is more than access to finance. We have heard some example. Access is the most access those people need is access to the decision-making processes. And we have heard some wonderful example how this could work out on the ground. Pay a bus for people to go to the building where the important people sit. Help them to overcome their fear to talk. Help them not to shy away from being poor, but to be proud of what they reach. And don't start support when implementation starts. It's a really big problem that the big donors only jump in when the project description is ready and near to final. What we need is upfront payment. Resources and space for community to vision a just future are costly. They don't do it by their own. You need the room, you need the process, you need to, just imagine to bring a community together, yeah, from different regions. You mentioned it really well. They come from different areas, so you need staff resources, you need time. Some colleagues of mine in Bangladesh pointed out that they live in the communities 2 years because before they start any intervention, no one is giving support to those things. We need those spaces where local knowledge is being valued, collected and documented, where their ideas really count, but also where experts from different sectoral bubbles, from the civil society and also scientists and politicians come in to widen their horizon to challenges they don't see, but also spaces where other civil society actors come in who have to tell a story of success. Probably we know about other communities who were facing the same challenges, found solution to it, and those could enrich the discussion in a situation of the community. And then people start to define their vision, their goals, where they want to go to. And then a CSO can develop a program, a project proposal with them, on behalf of them, in their name. And then it will work out. Unless the problem is those results-based finance logic of the UNCCC does not work for those circumstances. And especially when it comes to mitigation, donors are asking, how much tons of carbon are going to be reduced in the end of the project? None. But still, this will be a huge contribution to a more climate-just and climate-friendly world in those settings. I just urge you to fill this gap, to make projects on the ground work. It will pay off in the future. And this is really, I can say, from the experience of the Misereor projects, or the projects that we support and are being done by the people on the local level, by themselves, that it really pays off in the end. because what they develop mostly work, and if not, you can evaluate with them. And also please give room for try and error, especially when it comes to the climate crisis. Societies will go through situations that they have never experienced. They need to have a room to try, to get an error, and to report honestly about the faults they made so that others can learn from it. And then to open it again and say, okay, you failed, no problem. You tried, and this is great. So we support you on the next step to bring the project to the next level. And this is so difficult for organizations on the ground. And all the feedback I got from partners, it's so valuable that you allow us to fail sometimes. This is what partnership is, and this is how we should define it on the UNCCC level as well. Thanks for your attention.
Anika. I think learning by doing is an approach that we should look for. I'll not take much time. I'll request Riaz Saab, 8 minutes. Pakistan, how Pakistan is coping up with the disasters from the policymakers' perspective. All yours. 8 minutes, and then give me 2 minutes to conclude, unless there are questions. I don't see any questions so far.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes,
Sanjay.
sir.
First of all, I will say to my Hindu friend that happy Diwali today.
Thank you.
And secondly, one thing is in Pakistan, there are 60% population living in rural areas and 45% workforce as well. They are transferring from rural to urban areas due to substandard living standard, substandard facilities in rural areas. In some parts, there is no electricity, gas, road infrastructure, schools, and public transport. So they are transferring from rural to urban areas. They need to stop. And this is only possible if we can and if we will develop infrastructure in rural areas. Secondly, when they transferred from rural to urban areas, they constructed their mud houses on state land in collaboration with the revenue department officials. There is no electricity, there is no street proper, and no cleanness and drainage, and everything is nothing. So these are a big stigma on urbanization in our country. In some parts, they called Kachi Badis. And every government, when they come on power and they are near to election, they announce ownership rights to Kachi Badis without any further facilities. Third, there is also need to give safeguard to domestic workers. We introduced a law to save domestic workers in my country, Pakistan. There is need that every country has ratified and signatory of ILO conventions and covenants, but need to implement. Unless we implement ILO conventions and covenants, we can't improve state of position of our laborers in the urban areas. Thirdly, now factories are not providing regular job to workers just to save them from their liabilities, and they introduced a contractor system. There is also need to curb contractor system. Separately, there is an emerging problem in South Asia is stunting in children, because due to malnutrition and due to increasing air pollution, at least 1/3 children of South Asia is being stunted, and their mental growth and tissues of brain are damaging. So the answer is to improve provision of nutrition to their mothers, and to plant more trees to reduce carbon monoxide from field. So more production of oxygen can reduce air pollution and stunting as well. And Pakistan is planting 10 billion trees. We introduced a 10 billion tree tsunami program on direction of Prime Minister Mr. Imran Khan, and this is producing good results in Pakistan. And again, there is a need to establish more new small towns surrounding big cities. This will reduce pressure on urban areas from shifting of rural population to urban areas. And again, there is need, if we want to reduce poverty, then we should encourage human development through education, through skill development. We established TEVTA's technical education and vocational technical authorities in all provinces. And we are encouraging and producing more skilled labor in the country, which will reduce poverty rate. And of course, there is also, we provided a framework of legal support, like constitution support, human rights and fundamental rights and basic rights, like housing and food security and education and healthcare, and of course wash, sanitation and clean drinking water. And again, there is need to implement with spirit Sustainable Development Goal SDG Agenda 2030. If Goal 1, 2 are directly linked with poverty eradication, and of course 4 is to improve education and human development, and half population is living women, gender empowerment goal by Goal 5. And of course, Goal 8 is very important to encourage economic growth and provide dignity and self-respect. And of course, climate action. The conference is on climate, and Goal 13 is directly linked with climate action, and Goal 16 as well. Unless we improve governance and strong judicial and justice system, we can't reduce unjust with poor people. So poor people also need justice, because economic justice and religious justice and social justice and judicial justice and official justice are linked with Goal 16 of the SDGs Agenda 2030. And again, I think there is need to work in South Asia. There is need to establish peace, progress, and prosperity. There was a strong forum that called SARC, but from last couple of years, this is a dead horse and not working well. So there is need to establish trust in between all countries. There is unfortunately trust deficit among all countries, in mostly countries. And I think if we want to reduce poverty rate in this region, I would like to conclude, we should encourage human development. We should improve local body system and planning. And we should strong and strengthen public utilities, especially development budget should be enhanced in the assemblies, and of course we should approach all political parties that their #1 priority agenda should be reduce of poverty in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Riyaz Saab. Excellent. I think certainly, that's an inspiration for other policymakers to follow all the recommendations, suggestions that Riyaz Saab has shared from Pakistan. So we heard from Bangladesh, we heard from India, we heard from Pakistan, we also heard from Anika on finance. I just want to check if there are any questions to us online. If no, fine, then I think we have 2 minutes. I can conclude. My takeaways from this panel is, and it's a long list, I'll try to summarize them as much as possible. We need a two-pronged strategy, mitigation and adaptation both. Source need to be curtailed. Adaptation, many excellent practices are being tried, tested, ready for application, but mitigation is important. We need to make sure that we stabilize below 1.5 degree goal. Dealing with permanent losses and damages is important. Unless we do that, from source to the destination, migration will keep coming, urbanization will keep growing, and it will be an urbanization not in a sustainable manner, but under panic. Independent, there is a mitigation deficit, as I said, and that need to be bridged. Migration is a reality. We need to stabilize it. We heard it from CNRS about livelihood examples being tried, diversification of livelihood, how to ensure that basic amenities like water, food are ensured for the communities so that they stay back in the villages. Food and livelihoods are sustainable. We heard it from Riyaz Saab about economic growth and social welfare that need to be at core. Good governance on which need to be responsible, transparent, accountable, and inclusive. Thank you, Riyaz Saab, for bringing our attention towards SAARC. We all are disappointed, but I should also say civil society in South Asia is together, is combined. We are waiting for government to come together. We also heard excellent example which are ready, and thanks Anika for raising issue about ensure access to those affected. There need to be a facility at Green Climate Fund. We need to create inclusive dialogues with communities who are affected. They need to be engaged in making decisions. There need to be direct funds to communities. And of course, local knowledge has a lot more examples that we need to pick up to build resilience of urban poor. And also ensure that the rich becomes responsible and urban become secure and resilient in the cities. I'll stop here. Thank you everyone for joining. Thanks everyone.